This story contains allegations of child abuse and the death of a minor. Viewer discretion is advised. This true crime documentary follows court testimony and investigative findings with respect for the victim and family. At 12:59 p.m., a nanny made a frantic 911 call. Her voice was shaking as she told the dispatcher a toddler had stopped breathing and was turning purple. But when doctors examined the child minutes later, they reached a conclusion that immediately raised alarm. These injuries could not have come from an accident, not from choking, not from slipping, not from a simple fall. Doctors said the force involved looked more like what they see in major trauma cases. And later that day, during a crime investigation inside a quiet Texas home, police noticed something chilling: a broken cabinet door held together with tape. And the marks found on the child's head matched that cabinet hardware. This would become one of the most disturbing nanny abuse cases ever prosecuted. This is the true crime story of Ada Cuadros and 14-month-old Kyle Lazarchik. Ada Betty Cuadros Fernandez grew up in Peru in the coastal city of Chimbote. She was the oldest of 4 siblings, known as disciplined, intelligent, and driven. Not reckless. Not volatile. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer, but financial reality cut that dream short. Like many young people, she believed the United States offered something her country could not: opportunity through work. In 2004, Ada arrived in Texas, hoping to build a better future. Instead, she would become the central figure in a babysitter murder case that shocked investigators, doctors, and jurors alike. In McKinney, Texas, Michael and Renee Lazarchik were raising 3 children, their daughter Elisa and twin boys Ryan and Kyle. When Renee prepared to return to work, the family searched for a caregiver they could trust completely. They interviewed several candidates through a nanny placement service. Ada stood out. She was mature, calm, physically capable, and emotionally steady. She didn't feel like a risk. At first, she worked days only. Later, she moved into the home. For months, there were no complaints, no red flags, no concerns. Which is exactly why this true crime nanny story would later feel so impossible to accept. In the summer of 2005, Ada informed the Lazarchiks she planned to leave Texas. Her relatives were returning to Peru, and she intended to go with them. Her plane ticket was booked for late October. The parents were surprised, but they didn't react angrily. They simply asked her to stay until they found a replacement nanny. Ada agreed. But from that point forward, her routine changed. She stopped sleeping in the house. Every night she left. Every morning, she returned early. At the time, it seemed harmless. Later, investigators would realize this detail mattered because it isolated a single day where Ada was the only adult present. On Wednesday, October 12th, Renee interviewed new nanny candidates. Earlier that day, she asked Ada to prepare macaroni and cheese for the twins. Ada fed the boys. When Renee returned home later, everything appeared normal. No bruises, no swelling, no unusual behavior. The twins went to bed like any other night. This would later become critical testimony because medical experts would say Kyle could not have functioned normally after sustaining the injuries that killed him, meaning whatever happened had not happened yet. At 5 a.m., Kyle woke up crying. This was unusual but not alarming. Renee rocked him until he calmed down. At 7:30 a.m., Mike kissed the twins goodbye and left for work. Before 9:30 a.m., Renee changed Ryan's diaper, spent time with both boys, and left the house. From this moment on, the timeline became airtight. Only 3 people were inside the home: Ada, Ryan, Kyle, and only 1 adult. At 12:59 p.m., Ada called 911. She said Kyle wasn't breathing and was turning purple. The dispatcher instructed CPR. Paramedics arrived and took over emergency care. When asked what happened, Ada said Kyle vomited and suddenly stopped breathing after lunch. But when she spoke to Renee shortly afterward, her explanation changed. Now Kyle had fallen. This inconsistency became one of the most important elements in the crime investigation documentary that followed. Because while people panic, injuries don't change their story. Kyle was rushed to the hospital and then airlifted to Dallas Children's Hospital. Doctors examined him. The mood shifted instantly. Severe head trauma, swelling, injuries inconsistent with a household fall. A specialist trained in child abuse cases told the parents the injuries looked like extreme blunt force trauma. This wasn't a medical mystery anymore. It was a potential capital murder child case. Renee immediately arranged for Ryan to be removed from the home, because once doctors raised the possibility of intentional harm, everything changes. Concerned that Ada was too shaken to care for Ryan, Renee sent her friend Janet to help. Janet found Ada crying, repeating that she loved Kyle and would never hurt him. Then a police car passed the house. Ada collapsed. She screamed, "No, no," and hid behind a door. Panic alone doesn't prove guilt. But in real crime documentaries, behavior becomes bait, especially when it doesn't match the situation. Detectives soon arrived to question Ada. She was no longer just a witness. She was the only adult present when Kyle stopped breathing. Ada told detectives Kyle vomited, turned blue, fell, and convulsed. Investigators examined the playroom. Soft mats, no hard surfaces. That explanation failed. Ada suggested Kyle might have hit his head on a doorframe while she carried him. Investigators found no sign of violent impact. Each explanation changed. The forensic evidence case remained the same. Ada was arrested. While the house was being cleaned, Janet noticed something strange. A cabinet door under the kitchen island, held together with tape. Renee later said she never taped it and never noticed it damaged. Police returned to examine it. The cabinet door would become one of the most important pieces of forensic evidence in the case. On October 14th, doctors declared Kyle brain dead. There was no chance of recovery. Mike and Renee made the most painful decision imaginable. Life support was removed. Kyle died at 14 months old. This was no longer just a disturbing nanny case. It was a homicide. During trial, medical experts testified Kyle suffered multiple head impacts. Forensic analysts compared the spacing of the cabinet door hardware to pattern marks on Kyle's head. They matched. DNA testing found material consistent with Ada on the tape holding the cabinet door together. The prosecution argued Kyle's head had been struck repeatedly against the cabinet door. The defense argued accidental injury. But jurors focused on three things: the medical certainty, the physical evidence, and the repeated changes in Ada's story. Ada Cuadros was convicted of capital murder. Sentence: life without parole. Years later, the conviction was overturned due to procedural errors. A new trial followed. New arguments. Same evidence. Once again, the jury found Ada guilty. Life without parole again. This case leaves one question that never truly fades. How does trust inside a family home turn into irreversible loss? A babysitter hired carefully, parents doing everything right, and a single afternoon that became one of the most shocking nanny cases in modern true crime. Kyle Lazarchik never got to grow up. And whatever conclusion you reach, this was not a tragedy caused by chance. Based on the timeline, medical testimony, and forensic evidence, what do you believe happened inside that house? Share your thoughts respectfully. If you value fact-driven true crime documentaries, like, subscribe, and share. Until the next investigation.